Greetings, viewer. Myself, Micheline Kaiser Awunchia, and my colleague, Madam Itonge Gladys, we are going to present an expose on the course titled DED 504, course titled Introduction to Educational Administration and Planning. We are going to dwell on Unit 12, which is on the topic, the Cameroon Educational System. We are going to break this topic into 4 objectives. Objective 1, to identify and describe the major components that make up the Cameroon educational system. 2, the nature of the Cameroon educational system. 3, the administrative structure of the Ministry of Education. And finally, the challenges or the issue affecting this ministry. So we are going to continue with objective 3 and 4. Objective 3 is on the administrative structure of the Ministry of Education. What is an administrative structure? An administrative structure refers to an organized framework that aligns the rules, responsibility, and relationship within an organization. It defines how tasks are divided, coordinated, and controlled within an organization. And a well-defined administrative structure helps to ensure efficiency, accountability, effective decision-making, effective communication, and adaptability. The administrative structure of the Ministry of Education is complex, and it's focused on the following ministries. 1, the Ministry of Basic Education, the Ministry of Secondary Education, and the Ministry of Higher Education. The Ministry of Basic Education is in charge of the nursery, the primary education, and the teacher training education. While the Ministry of Secondary Education is in charge of the general education, technical and vocational education. Then the Ministry of Higher Education is in charge of the university and other high institutions. We are going to focus mostly on the Ministry of Basic Education because that's our course of study. This ministry, that's the Ministry of Basic Education, was created by a decree number 2005/140/2000 April 2005. This ministry is in charge of coordinating and implementing the government policy on matters concerning this ministry. The Ministry of National Education has many components, and some of these components are: 1, leadership, which concerns the minister; the private secretariat; the 2 technical advisors; the general inspector of service; the general inspector of teaching; the the central administration, and the disconcentrated services. Each of these components has its own specific function to carry out. For example, we have the private secretariat, which is headed by the secretary, who is in charge of receiving the affair of the minister. We also have the technical advisor, who executes all the mission confirmed to him by the minister. We also have the general inspectorate of service, which is placed under the authority of the inspector, and he or she is in charge of the internal affairs of the ministry. We also have the general inspectorate of teaching, which comprises of 3 inspectorates, and these inspectorates are: 1, the inspectorate of pedagogy in charge of nursery, primary, and teacher education; the inspectorate 2, the inspectorate in charge of promoting bilingualism; and finally, the inspectorate in charge of computer education. With objective 4, which is on issues affecting the Cameroon education system. The Cameroon education system is plagued with critical issues which is affecting the system, And one of these critical issues is the harmonization of the school organization and program. The Cameroon law of 1963 and 1998 called for harmonization of the English-speaking system and the French-speaking subsystem. This harmonization has been achieved at the primary level, that's at the basic level, but because both subsystems have a 6-year educational program. But at the secondary level, harmonization has not been achieved because at the first cycle, we have 5 years program, and at the upper and lower seed level, we have 2 years program. While in the French subsystem, they have a 4 years program at the first cycle and 3 years program at the second cycle, which shows that harmonization has not taken place at the secondary level. Another critical issue is the centralization of decision making. This is another major issue affecting the Ministry of Education. This is because decision is all centralized at the top level. Though there have been recommendations for decentralization of the pedagogic and financial administration from the central power to the local level. Another major issue also is the curriculum development. This is a critical issue plaguing the Cameroon education system. One of the major goals of the education system is to develop a quality and relevant education program that will enable students or youth to fit themselves conveniently in their society so as to meet the societal needs. Another issue is the moral decadence in our society today. In our present era, there is a high rate of moral decadence, school corruption, embezzlement, and so forth that has been affecting our system. It is for this reason that the government is insisting and encouraging the teaching of moral and civil education plus the teaching of religious studies in our educational system, so as to help instill some moral values in our youth, so we have a better youth for tomorrow. Another issue that is also affecting our education system is the lack of sufficient funds. In recent years, the education system has been faced with this challenge. They are fall short of meeting up the need of the education demand. Though the government is putting in all effort, being committed in the education in order to achieve the educational goal, but to an extent, they have not been able to meet the educational needs of the country. They have come short of meeting the educational needs of the society, which has become a serious issue on the educational system on the whole. Another major issue is the socio-economic and security challenges that the system is facing. The Cameroon education system has been faced with some socio-economic crises, such as the Boko Haram, which is an extremist group attacking schools and adopting children, especially in the northern region of Cameroon. Another crisis also is the Anglophone crisis, which is affecting the northwest region and the southwest region. This has led to the attack of schools and closure of many schools in the region, in these two regions, and has made limited thousands of children to have access to quality education. Having looked at these challenges that is affecting our education system, we will have to stop here, and thank you so much for listening.
We'll be taking the second part of this presentation. I will be talking on the major components of the Cameroon education system, as well as the nature of Cameroon education system. I will start with the nature of the Cameroon education system. Schooling in Cameroon started in 1844 when the first primary school was opened by a Baptist missionary, Joseph Merritt, in India. Thus, the system has evolved through former colonial administration of Germany 1844 to 1914, the British and French 1922 to 1960, 1961. 1960 to 1961 marked the year of independence for French and British Cameroon. Cameroon education system is composed of 4 levels: pre-primary, primary, secondary, and higher education. I will briefly talk on the first 3 levels. Pre-primary education, this component consists mainly on nursery schools. However, a few daycare exist. The age range of admission of children into the nursery school is 4 to 6 years. Nursery education was formerly controlled by the Ministry of National Education, but is presently placed under the Ministry of Basic Education. The specific objectives of nursery education are: 1. To prepare children for primary education. 2. To cater for children while their parents are at work. 3. To introduce them to numbers, letters, and shapes. And finally, to promote the general physical, social, and intellectual development of the children. Nursery schools are more concentrated in urban areas, but efforts are made by the government and individuals to extend them in rural areas as well. The government also prepares a harmonized syllabus in 1989 for all nursery schools in the country. The major challenges faced by this level of education are: there are expensive and inadequate teaching materials, shortage of good playgrounds, shortage of qualified teachers, especially in the private schools, poor sanitation and health facilities in many schools. The next component is a primary education. It is the oldest and well-spread level of education. Primary education is placed under the control of the Ministry of Basic Education. Duration of studies here is 6 years, as stipulated by the 1998 Cameroon Education Law. However, these components, we have 3 levels. The level 1, which is made up of classes 1 and 2, level 2, classes 3 and 4, and level 3, classes 5 and 6. The specific objectives include the provision of basic education of essential knowledge and skills by individuals for daily living. The preparation of children for secondary education for those who wish to further their studies. Since independence, the government has placed a lot of emphasis at this level. The goal has been for education for all. Many reforms has also been instituted. Public primary education is partially free, which is no fees, no school fees. However, we are going to see some major problems affecting this level. 1. Acute shortage of teachers in the rural areas. 2. High dropout rates because of poverty. 3. Inadequate supply of pedagogic materials. And 4. Inadequate in-service training for teachers. The third component, which is the secondary education, is made up of 3 levels. The general education, the general secondary school education, technical secondary education, and primary teacher education. We will start with the general secondary education. The specific objectives in this sector is to provide general education that will serve as a foundation into specialized fields of engineering, medicine, teaching, and agriculture, just to name a few. Duration in this level is 7 years, 5 years in the first circle and 2 years in the second circle. This only operates in the English-speaking schools, whereas with the French-speaking schools, we have 4 years in the first circle and 3 years in the second circle. Entrance into secondary schools is done through entrance examination. A typical example of this is the public secondary schools and denominational schools. Major problems of this subsector include the following. Curriculum is focused on examination. Shortage of teachers, especially in science subjects. High rate of dropouts and shortage of classrooms and other facilities. Technical secondary education. This subsector specializes in the study of technical and vocational subjects. The following are the specific objectives. 1. Providing technical and vocational skills that are relevant to industrial, commercial, and agricultural development. Introducing students to different vocation and trade. 3. Providing students with lifelong skills. Challenges faced with technical education are 1. Shortage of qualified technical education teachers. 2. Lack of job opportunities for graduates. 3. Low prestige of technical education compared to general education. We'll be talking on the primary teacher education. This subsection constitutes part of nursery education, part of secondary education rather, but run under Ministry of Basic Education. Specific objectives is to train teachers for primary education. Students are admitted through a competitive exams. Duration training as specified in the 1998 law is 2 or 3 years depending on the qualification, depending on the entry qualification. Graduates look for employment either in the public or private sector. The curriculum is built on that of primary schools, but it is conducted at higher and deeper level. Other professional subjects are included in the curriculum. Challenges facing the teacher training education. Inadequate facilities and equipment. Shortage of experienced teachers in certain key subjects. Poor attitude of some students who do not take their work seriously. Furthermore, the aforementioned components or levels operate 3 subsystems: English subsystem, French speaking subsystem, and Arabic subsystem. The Arabic subsystem is not officially mentioned in the 1988 Education Law. I will be talking on the English speaking and the French speaking subsystem. These subsystems are inherited from Britain and France respectively. The English speaking subsystem is common in the north and southwest regions as well as in urban areas in Francophone areas in Cameroon. Bilingual schools are found even in subdivisional headquarters. French is taught as a subject. General Certificate of Education is a terminal certificate for general secondary education. On the other hand, the French-speaking subsystem is concentrated in the other regions of Cameroon as well as in urban centers of the north and southwest regions. English is taught as a subject. Baccalaureate is the terminal certificate for secondary education. Even though the Arabic subsystem is not mentioned in the 1998 Education Law, it is found in the northern regions of Cameroon as well as in urban areas where there are a large number of Muslim followers. It is organized into 2 main stages: the elementary and complementary stage. The elementary stage is focused on reading the Quran While the complementary stage, students choose what they will wish to study, and the medium of instruction is Arabic. Myself and my colleague have come to the end of this presentation. Thank you very much.